All right, and here we go. My name's Stewart, and thanks so much for tuning in to webinar 3 of the ABC of BOB's How to Build a Bug Out Bag webinar series. And this one is all about, this was a really fun one tonight, guys. It's all about tools and self-defense. Now, I know that there are some people who are just tuning in who haven't been to the last two. So we're just going to go over a couple of really quick housekeeping notes before we get started the webinar. This is a pretty packed webinar, I think, tonight. This is a pretty packed class tonight. So we're gonna get right into it. So right now you should see a welcome screen, which has a picture of me and also the title of the webinar. And so right now I'm going to click on, and you should see a live screen of me pop up somewhere on your computer screen or your phone. So if you want to, I'm going to be switching back and forth tonight between the live. Sometimes it'll be split screen with me live doing some show and tell. Sometimes it'll be slideshow only. Sometimes it will be video, live video only. So if at any point in time you want to see my video screen bigger on this live webinar, all you got to do is just grab the bottom corner of the screen and drag it, and you can expand that screen and make me as big as you want if you want to see something a little closer than. Sometimes the screens are kind of tiny. So, and we definitely encourage questions. In fact, I've incorporated quite a few questions from the past couple of webinars, the past couple of classes and courses into tonight's course. So there's a little tab over on the control bar that says questions. That's where you can submit questions, and if we have time, we'll do some live questions. I've got a moderator here with me tonight. You guys who have tuned in before have already met him. Jake Wild, come over here and introduce yourself. Jake helps me. Say hello. Yes. There we go. So Jake helps me moderate. We get a lot of questions. We've got hundreds and hundreds of people watching this, and so we have a constant kind of matrix feed of questions going out throughout the evening. So he's making notes, and he kind of feeds me notes throughout the evening, and I try to address things as I can. Any other housekeeping items I need to cover that I'm not covering? Okay, so I'm going to drop off of the live screen really quick here, and we're going to go straight to the presentation. Don't worry, I'm going to be coming back. I'll be coming back here. So, all right, so let's get started. Our count started to slow down a little bit. I always like to take up a couple of minutes and let people kind of get into the course here. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, my name is Stewart, and I make no ifs, ands, or buts about it. My mission in life is to teach life-saving survival skills to as many people as possible. And I'm super honored and thrilled that that includes you tonight, and hopefully for many, many, many years to come. So you may be tuning in tonight because you have heard of or purchased my book called Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag. I wrote that several years ago, and I've said in all of these courses, this entire series, that it's still an Amazon bestseller to this day. But that has nothing to do with me or my writing ability. It has everything to do with this is a topic that people are concerned about. And so I'm really glad to have you on the line tonight, and hopefully I can really offer some value into your life. For those of you who have ordered bug out bundles, most of you have probably already received those. I know there are a few, Jake Wild, that are still in the office waiting on some miscellaneous things that should be going out this week, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So if you haven't gotten yours, don't worry. I have a feeling that everything's going to be in the hands this week, we're hoping. So thanks for your patience with that. We had an overwhelming number of orders for those. So, all right, let's get to it. So this category, tools and self-defense, could be a very heavy category if you're not careful, right? Some of you are nodding your heads, I'm sure. Some of you are saying, trust me, Creek, this category is super duper heavy for me. You know, I've got all kinds of stuff in this category. And if you let it, you could literally add like 30 pounds to your pack in this category alone. But I'm going to do my best tonight to simplify this category, to cut pack weight, to cut pack bulk, and really try to put in, you know, what's practical, what's necessary, what's not necessary, etc. So let's start with, probably my, one of my favorite categories, certainly in this entire series, and that is bug out tools. We're going to go split screen here. Jake's giving me the okay that everything looks good. We're going to go split screen, and then we're going to dive right into bug out tools. Okay, so what are bug out tools? This is like any type of product that you're putting in your pack that you're using as a tool. It includes a few miscellaneous items for me that you may not have necessarily thought, oh, Creek put this in the tools category. That's interesting. But it's a pretty short list, to be honest with you. But if you don't watch out, it could get pretty heavy. So first tool, we're going to get right to it. So first tool, obviously, everybody has got a knife of some sort in their bug out bag, right? I'm certainly not alone in that. Let's talk a little bit about a knife and what kind of knife you should be looking for. There's a photo of, for those of you who are familiar with my whiskey knives, that is my whiskey camp. That's the knife I carry in my bug out bag right now. But I'm going to recommend a few other knives as well. It's just not about my whiskey knife line, that's for sure. There are literally, when I say hundreds, I mean hundreds, probably thousands of knives that would make an absolutely perfect bug out bag survival knife. So some ideal features, and this is a short list that you're looking for in a bug out bag knife, are ideally, you're looking for something fixed blade. Ideally, you're looking for something full tang. Ideally, you want a nice quality sheath, something that's got good retention. You're not going to lose. It's not going to split open in your pack or on your hip. And you want this tool. You want your knife to be razor sharp. A dull knife is a dangerous knife. Potential uses, it's limitless. And that's what I'm pretty much going to say with all the tools I'm including in this list. The potential uses are infinite. Food prep, shelter, fire, making campcraft items if you're hunkering down for the night. There's all kinds of things to consider with your knife. So I'm going to do a little bit of show and tell. I should be screen only here. I'm live screen only. Okay, so you've seen the picture of my whiskey camp. That's my whiskey camp. This is, I don't know, about a 5-inch blade, or so you can get an idea for the size of the knife. I like a reasonable size knife for my bug out bag. I don't want anything too big, don't want anything too small. I like something in the 8 to 9 inch range, and that's about where this camp falls. There are tons of knife. You guys, for those of you who have followed me for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of the Blackbird SK5. That's a great knife to put in your bug out bag. It's a fantastic knife as well. This is a really cool knife that I like. This is the Buck Compadre. This is a part of a line they introduced a few years ago. They got these red blades, kind of powder coat red. It's unique, but I like this shape and style. Like, that's a really kind of classic looking fixed blade full tang knife. This is the Buck Compadre. I think this is going to run you about 40 or 50 bucks. My whiskey camp's about 100. This Compadre would fit all of those categories just fine. But I'm going to also take a stretch here and say that this $15 Mora, I would be more than happy to take this as my bug out bag knife, and I wouldn't complain about it a bit. And I would certainly not beat anyone up about it if this was your main bug out bag knife. A Mora, this is the Mora, the new release of the Mora 511. This knife's going to cost you $15 or less. It is not a fixed blade. It is not a full tang. It is a fixed blade. It's not a full tang knife. If you could look into this handle, this knife tang would taper down to a little point that ends at about the bottom of the grip here. It's a rat tail tang. And but I tell you what, I've used Moras for 15 years. They're ridiculously incredible knives for the price. I've never in my life broken one, and I beat and use knives more than most. These are fantastic blades. If you're on a budget, they're also lightweight. Get yourself a $15 Mora and be proud of it. So those are 3 kind of just classic knives that are readily available that would make great bug out bag knives. Like I said, There are literally thousands of knives that will work that you can get from any store. You could get a fantastic bug out bag knife from Walmart. You get a fantastic one from any outdoor retailer that sells hunting and fishing equipment and supplies. And of course, there are tons of custom knife makers with really beautiful high-end knives that would work for bug out bags as well. So let's bring the screen back up here. We are going to, should see my slide. Okay, perfect. We are going to move straight into, and I'm moving quick tonight, guys. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, don't worry about taking notes, because I forgot to mention in the beginning, don't worry about taking notes, because I provide all of this information to you tomorrow. I provide links to everything that I've mentioned if you wanted to buy something exactly that I've mentioned or something similar. But you get a copy of this presentation, this PowerPoint presentation, and you get a link to the recorded webinar. So you get all of this. So just focus on listening, enjoying, sitting back, watching the show, rather than meticulously taking notes tonight. So let's talk about a multi-tool. Super important. If I had to choose a multi-tool or a knife for my bug out bag, I'd probably choose a multi-tool. Because why? Because, well, a multi-tool is my backup knife. So I technically have two knives in my bug out bag. One of those is in my multi-tool. So a multi-tool, before I get to a little bit of show and tell here and close down the screen, some ideal features that I would not compromise with a multi-tool are pliers, your backup knife. For me, at least, this is my backup knife. And a pair of wire cutters on a multi-tool, a flathead screwdriver, and a Phillips screwdriver. I was doing this presentation on a plane, so hence me misspelling Phillips and screwdriver. So, oh well. Potential uses, absolutely unlimited. If you just use your imagination for the uses of a multi-tool. I want to show you some fantastic multi-tools that you could potentially consider. So should be live screen only. And the multi-tool I use in my bug out bag, this is expensive, guys. I don't expect anybody to go out there and buy this one. This is an expensive multi-tool, but I'm going to show you some incredible ones that are just as good as this one, except they're like a fraction of the price. The only reason I like this is the Leatherman Mutt, in the Leatherman MUT. I'm a huge fan of Leatherman multi-tools. They make fantastic multi-tools. This is the Mutt. This has specific tools for breaking down an AR-15, which is why I like this tool. So that's about it's very robust, and you can change out the blades and tools on this particular multi-tool, which is a really nice feature. But I expect to have this multi-tool for my entire life. I've had it for like 10 plus years. I expect to, hand it down to my kids one day. So, but there are multi-tools that aren't nearly as expensive as this. But this is a fantastic multi-tool. It's got, multiple options for screwdrivers. Got a saw. Got a really nice knife on it. That's got a little serrated section on there, which is great for a backup blade. It's also got a little saw. We're going to talk about a saw here in a minute, but it's got a little saw. Got some great screwdriver features as well. Another really great Leatherman option is the Leatherman Sidekick. If you use a Leatherman in your multi-bag, shoot Jake Wild the model right now. I'd like to know. I'd like to know what you're using. The Sidekick's a fantastic one. It has screwdriver options. It has pliers. It has everything that I'm talking about here. It's got everything you need in this guy right here. It's got a knife and a saw. It's got a really nice little knife. This particular one came with a kind of a couple little wrench options in the carabiner there. It's a really great little multi-tool. One that doesn't have, well, a really nice Leatherman, the Leatherman Freestyle here, but it doesn't have, it's got a really awesome knife. It's got a great set of pliers and wire cutters. It's really compact and lightweight, but it doesn't have a screwdriver set, which I really would prefer you have a screwdriver set just in case, because There's all kinds of uses for a flathead and Phillips screwdriver. You know, for those of you who might be on a budget, you know, who's not on a budget, who wouldn't want to save a little bit of money, right? This Schrade Tough Tool, and don't worry, you get links to all these. This Schrade Tough Tool right here, I've had this particular one. I bet I've had this thing 15 years. It is a fantastic multi-tool, and I swear I think it's like $15. 15 or $16. It's ridiculous. It's got everything and more that I've mentioned. It's a fantastic tool, just as good as any of the Leathermans I've used, but just way, like significantly less expensive. And this also comes in black and silver. So this is a fantastic tool. I've used it. I've beat this up. I've used it. You know, I've had it in my truck for years. So I carry that particular one in my truck. So, you know, so I'm a big fan of multi-tools. These are all my multi-tools, so I probably have more than that. But you got to have a multi-tool in your bug out bag. There's so many. That is one tool, like in an improvised survival scenario, that you just cannot like improvise. You know, if you don't have a pair of pliers and you need a pair of pliers, it is very difficult to kind of like squeeze two sticks together or use, you know, it is just like so impossible to makeshift a pair of pliers. Okay, so let's pop up to our next tool. Pretty easy so far, right? We got a knife and a tool. I'm a big fan of a pry bar. This is the Stanley Wonder Bar. It's I think it's 12 3/4. I recommend something 18 inches or less. You know, any bigger than about 18 inches, and you're looking at, you know, really seriously decent sized tool in your bug out bag. It starts getting a little bulky and heavy. So this is 12 3/4 inches, I believe, about 2 inches wide. Again, limitless uses. Digging. I've dug more than one fire pit with my Stanley Wonder Bar. Perfect for prying up windows, whether you're trying to get out of your house. You know, I've covered some stories in SOS How to Survive this past season where people were struggling with even getting out of their house, breaking through their own roofs and hurricanes and stuff. You know, this thing right here is perfect for prying up boards and rafters and shingles and things like that, but certainly prying into somewhere as well. If you know, life or death situation, you got to get in somewhere for an emergency. Daggone, this thing's good for that. Chipping ice, you know, breaking ice off of something, you know, just goes on and on. Let me go video only here, just so you can see kind of perspective on this Wonder Bar. It's got a nail puller, got a flat plot pry, and a kind of an elbow L pry. It's a really great little bar. Make great for demolition too. So let me just quickly show you a couple other options that Stanley has that are really cool. So you got the Super Wonder, which is on the right there. And that's, you know, got a little hump in it, so you can really get some leverage on a pry. And oh, there we go. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So there's the Stanley Super Wonder Bar, and you've got the Stanley Demolition Bar. I don't own either of those, but I've certainly seen them in the hardware store. All these pry bars are in between $12 and $20. They're all really affordable. That demolition bar is kind of cool. You know, it's got a chopper on it, you know, sharpened area. The Super Wonder is about 15 inches. The Stanley Demolition Bar is about 14 inches. They would make fantastic bug out bag kind of pry bar tools. You just don't want to be prying with your knife or your saw. And I can almost, man, I tell you what, it's not hard at all to imagine a need to pry something in a bug out scenario. That's for sure. So those are three really great options for a pry bar solution. Okay, folding saw. If I had to choose a wood processing tool for the woods, would I choose an axe? Would I choose a saw? I would choose a saw hands down. My favorite wood processing tool for kind of building shelters and cutting firewood is a 36-inch Baco bow saw, but that is not practical for a bug out bag, at least not my bug out bag. And so I've got a couple of recommended folding saws, one of which I carry in my pack. I carry this one right here. We released this one in a pocket box not long ago. This one's the Creek version. Ideal features are about 12 inches. You don't want anything bigger than 12 inches. It just gets a little bit too bulky. And I would just toss the sheath. It just adds bulk and weight. Just shove it down in your pack or a pocket in your pack. I don't think you really need a sheath for your folding saw in your bug out bag. You're mainly looking for shelter preparation and firewood with something like this. So let me show you each of these. So we've got this Creek version, which I know a lot of you have. I certainly still sell it, but then you've got the Baco Laplander, which is a fantastic saw. I've used both of these for a long time. They open slightly differently. This one's got more of a kind of a leverage close and open there. And then the Baco is a push button. You push this button right here, and it's a release. Both of them have, I believe, I've never had to change the blade on my Baco. I think you can change this blade out on your Baco. I'm almost positive you can. I know you can on this one right here. That's always a good feature, to be able to change out blades rather than buy a whole new tool. So these are almost identical in size, weight, and length. But a folding saw is, I would consider, a critical tool for a bug out bag. It certainly earns its weight and space in your kit for processing wood. Especially for shelter poles, or even though you have a tent, you never know, right? And firewood, they're perfect tools for that. Okay, let's move on to my next tool. And this is one where you guys would like, oh, I didn't think about that for a tool, but yeah, absolutely. Here we start kind of a new phase of tools. We're out of kind of our hard use tools, like our knives and saws and axes. That's it, guys, for that category. Or move it into what I call the softer side of tools. And the first one here is the headlamp, hands-free. I have recently switched, I took my bug out bag headlamp, which I'll show you. I've got both of them here. I'll show you here in a second when we go to full screen. I was using a battery powered one. I've just recently, within the past, since I told you I gave my bug out bag away not long ago, and I upgraded some of my things and kind of rethought some of my things. So I bought a rechargeable one. Both of them were Petzl brand, Petzl. Don't worry, you'll get the links. And so I bought a rechargeable one because I'm kind of moving toward this rechargeable thing with a solar recharger. I've tested that in the field on many trips, like our trip to Mexico. We did a lot of testing with this solar charging unit to see how really practical that was on the move, and it is incredibly practical. We'll get into that in just a second. I like a headlamp with a red light. For those of you who aren't familiar with the red light on headlamps, you've got the white light, which is your traditional headlamp, and then you've got a red light that also can come on, and it's a red lamp. Let me pull this up real quick. There we go. Yeah. So you're not seeing, now you're seeing it, right? Okay, good. We're seeing that. Jake Wild's over here keeping me honest, making sure my screens are showing. But the red light on your headlamp, you can turn that on at night, and it just doesn't blind you. It allows you to completely see in a red light, but then when you turn it off, your eyes just kind of immediately go back to seeing in the dark again. Versus when you turn on the white light and you turn off that white light, it takes another couple of minutes for your eyes to readjust back to darkness, and you don't have that lapse in time with a red light on your headlamp. So it's a great feature to have, and it's just a lot less harsh. If you're being a little bit more covert, it doesn't, that red light just doesn't travel as far. It doesn't light up as much. So that's a good kind of feature of it as well. Yeah, in my opinion, you want a case for your headlamp, and I'll talk about those cases here once I go to full screen. But potential uses, obviously, nighttime travel, nighttime work, low light conditions in buildings without power. Totally practical that you would be in a building without power. Um, and signaling, across the, I remember in Boy Scout camp, we would signal. We were on opposite sides of this big lake, and when I was doing the wilderness survival merit badge, I was signaling back and forth to my troop. I'm okay with 3 flashes, and they would signal back, okay, cool, with another 3 flashes. So you could use your light for signaling like that too, like a method of communication, and a method of, ground to air signaling if you were in a kind of a rescue type situation at night. Okay, so I'm going to go drop my slide. I want to talk about these 2 headlamps that I would recommend. I'm a big fan of Petzl. I've bought cheaper headlamps, but they just tend to break. They just tend to break, and I've used this particular, the Tikka, I guess that's how you say it, Tikka, Tikka. You get the link to it. I'll tell you what breaks on other headlamps. You see how this is. When you put that on, you can adjust kind of where this, so this, pretend this is on my forehead, you can kind of adjust the angle of this. It's that brace back there that tends to break on other cheaper headlamps that I've bought. These are going to run you anywhere from 30 to 60 bucks. The rechargeable one, which I'll talk about here in a second, is a little bit more expensive. This operates on a couple of AAAs. So you may want to consider an extra set of batteries if you're going with a battery powered option. This is a little case that I bought that goes in this. This can slide or kind of around your, when I used to carry this on my bug out bag, I would put it around my shoulder strap, and it was always right there, kind of easy access. But I've moved to a rechargeable one. This is called I think the Tikka Core. Okay, here's a cool feature. This is the case which protects my headlamp in here, right? But this is also a lantern. See, watch, when I turn this on, you can click it on by clicking a button through there, and it turns into like it's like a diffuser. This cap is like a diffuser. You can hang it, got a hook on it. You can hang it from the inside of your tent. You can set it on a table, and it just kind of diffuses the light if you wanted to read a map or whatever you might be working on that you don't necessarily want to just blast it out with a headlamp light. So, but that's the case to it. And then you've got the light itself. Very similar. It's got a couple different settings, and it's got that red light setting. There's the red light. You can see that a little bit. I don't know how well it turns on here, but it's got several different settings. Just depends on how you hold it down, the home button. There's one. There's a super bright. There's off. A couple different settings are nice to have on a headlamp, but definitely go a headlamp. I'm a fan of Petzl because I've used them for years, and I've never had any of them. I've never had one break on me. In fact, I replaced the one I was using that I've been using for 15 years with a new one just this year, and so I'm going to put the other one in kind of a backup kit. Actually, the other one's it's going in my get home bag, which is a little smaller version of a bug out bag that I keep in my truck. So, because I did have a really kind of a cheap Energizer headlamp, which I really liked, but it was only like $6 that I got at a convenience store. There's a little Energizer headlamp, which was really nice, but I'm going to replace it with that Petzl. So, all right, we're going to bring the screen back up here. We're going to move to our next tool. I don't have a printout because I was traveling, and so I'm just finding these slides as you are. So, solar power bank. This is something that I've added to my bug out bag in the last year or so. I've been testing the idea of a solar power bank for a long time now, and I've decided to include one. It's definitely bulky. The one I use is about it's $100 and something, maybe $130. It's kind of expensive, but man, we have become so, I don't want to, maybe the word dependent is the word to use, on smartphones. that, you know, and I have studied disaster scenarios for a long time. I've talked to hundreds of people who have bugged out. And I tell you guys, when they bug out, they're displaced for a little bit. You know, not one person have I talked to in the United States, at least, who has bugged out and everywhere is in a full-on collapse. When they bug out from their immediate vicinity, the world as they know it, everybody around that vicinity is operating as if nothing happened. They've got power, they've got water, they've got everything. It's just these evacuees are displaced into another area and they've kind of got their own stuff. And that includes their own phones, their own phone chargers. And unless you have a solar charger, or I'll talk about next, like a battery backup bank, then you're kind of at the mercy of finding a charge from somebody else. And I've heard that story more than once, and it has really made me rethink my power options in my bug out bag. So I don't actually have any batteries in my bug out bag. Oh, I have batteries that I have in this solar bank that I'll talk about here in a minute, but none of the items, the power items that I can think of that require power in my bug out bag, including my cell phone, including my headlamp, require me to plug in somewhere. I can charge everything with this solar power bank and a battery bank that I also am bringing in my bug out bag that we'll talk about next. But this particular power bank that I use, it's the Goal Zero Guide 10. I'll just do a little bit of show and tell here in a second. It'll direct charge your smartphone, it'll direct charge a tablet, anything USB, it'll direct charge pretty much. It'll charge up removable AA and AAA batteries, which I do have some of those. And it'll charge those charge up those from a USB port on the pack, or it will charge them directly through the sun. And it's got a built-in, this little thing has a built-in LED light. So let me just show you this Guide 10. I'm sure there are other options out there like this one, but this is the one I use. Here you can get a reference for size. So probably a pound and a half, maybe. It's a little bulky. I'd rather not have it in my bag, but boy, does this open up some pretty cool options. So I actually have two of these, one in my bug out bag and another one in a different bag. It opens up like this. You can easily strap, it's got all kinds of loops on it. You can strap it to the back of your pack. You can lay it on a table. We were just laying it out on a big rock in the desert when we were in Mexico. I've used it in sun. I've used it in winter. I've used it in summer. I've used it in all weather conditions. It works perfect as long as there's sun out. Let me show you a couple of the things that are in this pouch back here that are kind of unique. It's got you can plug in and then you can charge. If you've got a car charger, you can plug into this and use the sun to feed through your car charger, which is kind of cool. You can charge up rechargeable batteries using this tool. You can charge up rechargeable batteries. I've got AA's in here. But then once you charge up these rechargeable batteries, this particular thing right here acts as a power bank. So then you can recharge these using the sun. And then this is a little mini power bank that you can use to then charge your cell phone or something like that, you know. But it also has a little built-in LED light in there. So this is like a little backup flashlight. But I bought this little LED wand as a bag. This is my backup light, just in case something would go bad with my headlamp. This is my backup light. Let me see if. Oh, how do I do that? Well, shoot. What am I doing wrong here? I might not have enough. I don't think I got enough juice in it to power this right now. This has been sitting in there since Mexico. I need to recharge that. But when that's charged, when those batteries are good to go, this is a really great bright light. Really fantastic light. So that just gives you a backup light. But quite frankly, this isn't really that necessary because you've got this little single LED, which is a fantastic little light as well. So, Okay, so and then you've got all kinds of little, the standard attachments, and you've got all kinds of little, like here's a USB, you've got multiple USBs, you've got a 12 volt little guy right here. You've got all kinds of little attachments, and you can charge your phone using this. We kept our phones alive, literally out in the middle of nowhere using this kit. So I have opted to put one of these in my bug out bag. I could charge my headlamp, I could charge my cell phone, and anything else that's USB related. I could also charge some AA's if I need those. So it's a little bit of money, and it's a little bit of bulk and a little bit of weight, but something I've opted for. An alternate, or an addition to that same concept, is a power bank. You've seen this one's a little bit big. I use this one right here as an Anchor. I think it's the 26800. It'll charge a cell phone up to like 7 times. I'll show it to you in full screen here in a second. You've seen little smaller versions of this for cell phones for sure. I almost always travel with a smaller version of this to give my cell phone a charge once, or potentially 1.5, 2 times. At the very minimum, I would suggest keeping one of those in your pack. Those are really lightweight. They're really expensive. In fact, you can get them as promotional items sometimes from companies. They are really expensive. They're becoming really popular. They're available at every gas station, every pharmacy, every cell phone dealer has them, and they are a real lifesaver when you need a boost on your cell phone. And so I would certainly recommend getting one of those. Like I said, the one I really like is it's a brand called Anchor. It's kind of big. It's kind of heavy. But this will charge a cell phone 7 times. That's literally a week of use. This will charge your cell phone for an entire week of usage. And that's if you're using it really heavy. So, and this will also charge other USB devices as well. I could totally charge my headlamp. I could even recharge those rechargeable batteries, although this is just a bunch of batteries really. So this is an Anchor. I send you the link to that. This Anchor company, they've been really solid as far as I can tell, and they make a variety of sizes. So it's maybe something you haven't considered. You know, this rechargeable battery backup things, man. I just think it's a good move. I just think it's a good move to go. Okay, the next piece of equipment here. Where's my screen right now? Oh, okay. Let me go. All right, what do I do with my Gorilla Tape? There we go. Sorry to reach around there, guys. A next tool that I wanna mention here is, let me get my screen out of the way, is Gorilla Tape, or duct tape would be just fine. I'm a big fan of Gorilla Tape. I choose the 1-inch by 10-yard roll. I think this was $3 at local hardware store. Again, limitless number of uses: gear patches, binding, sheltering. The uses go on and on. Like I said, this is the 1-inch wide by 10-yard, 30-foot roll. That's a lot of Gorilla Tape. That's a lot of Gorilla Tape. And you can, I mean, darn near, as you know, repair about anything using this stuff. And it doesn't weigh that much. It just doesn't take up much room. It's a great product. Okay, let's move on. Where are we going to next? Compass and whistle. Let's get my screen back on here. Compass and whistle. I actually don't have my whistle with me here. It's in my first aid kit, which we'll talk about next week, which is a really cool class next week. Hygiene and first aid. Hygiene especially might surprise you. I have this my little compass here. You see it on the slide. That's the same compass I used in Scouts, guys. It's a little Silva. I couldn't find this one for a link, so I picked one really similar, probably an upgrade from this one, to include in your resources tomorrow. But this one is a little Silva compass, and you just never know when you need to kind of regain your bearings. For the size and weight, it offers you options. And I've always said that the man or woman in the worst predicament in the world is the one with no options. And that's what a lot of these tools that I'm presenting tonight offer you, is options. And that's certainly the case with a compass. And a whistle is self-explanatory. Communicate with your team, communicate with your friends. Alarm, make an alarm, but then also signal for rescue. The sound from a whistle travels louder and much farther than the sound of your voice. It takes up way less energy and calories doing it. I don't think there's a need to go full screen for my compass, but we'll do it anyway. There's the compass that I use just for size. It fits in the palm of my hand. All right. Now is why you guys have really showed up tonight. Haven't they, Jake Wild?
That's why I came.
That's why they showed up tonight. Bug out self-defense. They want to see me do some self-defense moves here behind the desk, right? We're going to demonstrate all of our self-defense moves tonight on Jake Wild. He's going to be our willing participant as I teach you how to put people in sleeper holds and all of that. So I've definitely gotten way more questions about self-defense than any other category. Tons and tons and tons of questions about self-defense. And I've actually got a lot of great feedback on a lot of great ideas from you guys. So I appreciate the emails. I'm including some of them at the end of this webinar. Where are we? 40. We're at 7. We're at 40 already. Dang. We're going to run a little over an hour, guys, because self-defense is a pretty decent sized category. Let's cut right to the meat of it, though. What do you say? We get right to it. So I'm just gonna show you what I pack in my bug out bag for self-defense. You would never want to leave home. Okay, wait, let me just get here. Let's get full screen. Now listen, you would never under any circumstance want to leave home with your bug out bag without something like this packed in there. Right? I mean, you definitely need a bat-shetty packed in your bug out bag. Now it makes it a little cumbersome to put this in there. It's a little awkward getting this. Look at that. Oh man, it makes it a little awkward getting that in there. Calm down. I can hear somebody. Creek, you better not have that. I do not have that in my bug out bag. Listen, I'm not that crazy. I went with the saw bat. You really got to use the intimidation factor when it comes to self-defense. This is the bat I put in my bug out bag. This guy right here. Thank my Uncle Jerry for that one. He helped me put that together. Look at that. No, I don't have that in my bug out bag either. I mean, if you're going to have one in your bug out bag, you need this one right here. The glass bat. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Liquid nails with glass. Oh Lord. You guys are saying, what have I signed up for? What in the world is Creek's lost his mind? Oh guys, I'm just playing. Hopefully you enjoyed my collection of zombie slaying bats though.
That's not all of them though.
Yeah, you should see my other ones. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about self-defense here. And by no means with any of these categories, certainly self-defense, am I trying to convince anyone to put any certain type of tool in their kit. I've said from the very beginning, listen guys, I'm going to open up my personal bug out bag. I'm going to show you what's in my bag, and I'm going to tell you why it's in there. And hopefully you either learn something for that or you don't. And if it's useful, fantastic. If it's not useful, it didn't hurt anything, right? It's a free course. So that being said, let's get into what I include and what I think about self-defense when it comes to bug out bags. Hopefully this will be enlightening. Okay. I look at self-defense tools just like I look at all of my other survival tools I pack to keep me and my family alive in the event of a bug out, just like if I were, if there was wild water that was threatening me and I had to purify that water in order to neutralize the threat in that water, I would absolutely use my water filter to do so, to make that water safe in order for me or my family to drink. And the same goes true with a person or an animal, or a bear or a cougar or a crazy person that may also threaten my safety or the safety of my family. And I would need to use a tool to neutralize that threat. So those are the types of things we're going to talk about in this particular category. So here's a question I got, a very good question. Are guns as necessary as I think? And if so, what's the best round? Especially since these days there are handguns and rifle options for every cartridge. Well, that's really for you to decide. This is ultimately me presenting my bug out bag and you deciding whether you like my strategy, whether you like my thoughts, or whether you kind of want to go with your own. So I'll present to you what I think about bug out bag self-defense and what I use for self-defense. Yes, it's true. Crime increases during large-scale natural disasters and large-scale disasters of any kind. The crime that happens across the board, looting, robbery, sexual assault, rape, and even homicide, all of those things spike in the epicenter of large-scale disasters. I don't think anyone would dispute or argue that. And why is that? Well, first responders are overwhelmed. I know that there are first responders who are watching this webinar series, and I would bank that they would agree with me that disasters overwhelm the system. You know, police officers are just not able to be everywhere at the same time, and a disaster creates a scenario where there's a lot of chaos at the same time, way, way, way more than the system is used to. And so there is a cloak of chaos that criminals tend to take advantage of, and grid down. There's low light, you know, at nighttime especially. Street lights are out, you know, lights aren't working, you know, that just breeds an environment for crime and the cloak of darkness and chaos. No phones, no landline phones, sometimes no cell phones even. Panic from lack of resources, including food, water, heat, etc. You know, it's not just about, you know, the crime that happens in a bug out types disaster scenario. It's not just about people stealing stereos and stuff like that. And, you know, it's not just about sexual assault. It is also about people stealing things and taking things to provide for their families. That's a side of it where, you know, is a really interesting side of this the whole crime thing when it comes to disaster. There are people who are, you know, just trying to provide, not that I'm making an excuse for anyone, I'm not doing that at all, but there are people who are looting and robbing for the sake of providing for someone else. It's an interesting dynamic nonetheless. It's important to note, so important to note this right here, that by preparing a bug out bag, that tells me you're preparing to bug out, right? Would you agree with me? Type yes to old Jake Wild here if you are preparing to bug out in the event of a large-scale disaster. Because bugging out not only gets you away from ground zero of the disaster, but also the crime that spikes in the midst of it. Almost all increases in crime exist in and around the epicenter of the disaster where disorder is present. What does that mean? That means if you stay, then you're more likely to get caught up in all of the craziness that happens. That seems obvious, right? You know, but on the flip side of that, if you're bugging out and you really are kind of neutralizing yourself from, historically, all of the crime that's happening is happening in the disaster area. And by getting out of it, you're getting kind of back into a normal place where all of that disorder and all of that chaos is not happening. That's historically, that's how disasters, at least in the United States, have happened. They're all very centralized. They're all very localized. They're all very regional. Not to say that anything on a much larger scale can't happen, because it certainly can. And certainly could change all of these rules, all of these benchmarks that I'm talking about. But if you're bugging out, you're kind of getting away from the threats in general. Maybe there's a little bit of kind of overlap in time where things are crazy and you're leaving the crazy. So you could certainly make that argument. Disaster criminals tend to be one of two things that we talked about a little bit: opportunists, who they're just like, hey man, I'm just going to start stealing stuff or taking advantage of people or exploiting people simply because I think I can get away with it. Some people just think like that. Some people are just criminally minded people, just evil, bad people. And those people exist and thrive in disaster scenarios. And some criminals are, like I mentioned earlier, they are desperate for resources. And if I had to provide for the people I love, I would, we may even surprise ourselves at what we would do if the people that we love and care about are hungry and cold and desperate, and who knows what I would do. I know what I would do, and I'm not going to say what I would do, but I don't know what I would do. Large-scale disasters create the perfect storm for both types of these criminals. Okay, so what are our options here? So we've got two options, really. We've got lethal and we've got non-lethal. Lethal is the category of guns. And let's talk about what is in my bug out bag when it comes to firearms. So if you read Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag, you know that I used to carry a .357 revolver, but I don't carry that anymore. I've changed my mind. I love revolvers. They fire 100% of the time, every time. But I've changed my mind. I carry a 9mm now. I'll show it here to you here in a second. But I'm going to talk about. I'm not trying. There's people who use guns. They tend to be pretty brand loyal. I'm not trying to convince anybody to switch guns, to do anything like that. I'm just, there's a lot of people who are on the fence and like they want to get into guns with their bug out bag. They want to start thinking about a self-defense firearm for their bug out bag, but they really don't know where to start. So I think this section is going to be really helpful for you, because I'm not even going to tell you what I use, but I'm going to give you some other really great handgun firearm options that you can look into as you start kind of finalizing your research in that area. But for those of you who are like, you know what, I'm never going to be a gun person, I'm going to give you some really good non-lethal options as well. So I carry 9mm now simply because of its availability. It's probably the most popular round. There are just an insane amount of 9mm ammunition available, and I just like that it's available. I like that, anybody who's watching this who has more than one gun probably owns some 9mm ammunition. I mean, you own some 9mm ammunition?
100%.
Heck yeah, you do. I mean, every person I know owns some 9mm ammunition, and it's out there, it's available. If you needed more, it's probably very likely, besides .22 long rifle, that you would find, maybe there's more .22 long rifle out there or more, but there's a lot of 9mm ammunition available, and it makes for a very packable gun. It's not the gun or the ammunition isn't really bulky as compared to like a .357 round. It's almost size-wise, it's almost double the size of a 9mm. I should have brought two of them to show you. I use the Glock 19. It's a semi-automatic. It has a 15-round magazine, 15+1 in the chamber if you wanted. And Glock is a really, 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 really popular firearm. And the Glock 19 is a very, very, very popular firearm. It's a really good firearm. It's proven in the field, and that's the one I've decided to use. It's the one I feel most comfortable with firing. It's the one I train with the most. I would say if you're not gonna dedicate time to put hundreds, thousands of rounds through your firearm to train for a potential self-defense types of situation, I would say don't even pack a firearm, because you know, if you're not really trained in shooting and handling and being comfortable with your firearm, it's just probably more dangerous to you and other people around you than it is helpful. So you know, it's a decision, unlike a water filter, which doesn't take any training. It's a decision that really does take some training and thought. And you got to spend some time at the range. You got to spend some time shooting at targets until you're really comfortable shooting. Otherwise, you're not going to hit the broadside of a barn anyway. You know, I mean, that's my 2 cents. So holsters for this Glock 19, I'll go live here and show you a little bit bigger on screen. I'll show you the holsters and everything. I like I've already, you know, let's just go live right now. So let me talk about these real quick. I know we're live. I'm just going to go full screen. So, okay, so the holster I carry with my Glock 19, let me show you really quick here. This is by a company called Kramer. It's a leather. I was introduced to this company by a friend not that long ago, and I just love leather in general. I know this, I got a really great kind of Kydex version. I guess it's Kydex, but something similar, molded. But this is a concealed carry holster. It goes, if you weren't for the first webinar, it goes kind of in. You can see where the belt loops are. Right there. It's actually more comfortable to me with a size up pant, and so my bug out pants are actually one size bigger than I normally wear. But your belt goes through there. It's a concealed carry. It's very comfortable for me to do. I really like this leather Kramer holster because I just really like leather in general. So it's a great fit. Look at it a little bit. And then I'll show you another holster that I really like for this particular. And this company makes holsters for all kinds of models, and so does this one. This is a Blackhawk. This is a Blackhawk CQC concealment Serpa holster. This is not necessarily concealment. This goes on a belt. Not necessarily conceal, but you know, you can certainly have an overcoat or a shirt over it. This goes on a belt like this right here. Nice thing about this holster is you can really just pretty much grab your gun. In this case, the Glock 19, you can pretty much just grab this gun. You have a release here. You put your hand on that release. When you pull out, your hand is set in your firing position. It's like you don't have to do anything but put your finger on the trigger. Okay, and it's got kind of a saddle here to pop your gun back in. Somebody can't yank it out unless they're pushing in on this little quick release here. You push in on this, you pull out, and you are immediately ready. You can immediately pull that gun and sight that gun. So you are immediately ready to. It's a really sweet little holster option and it's very, very, very easy and comfortable to use, and it's really secure. I would venture to say that there are quite a few law enforcement personnel or you know, just handgun owners in general who use this holster, maybe even this same model, maybe even this Blackhawk Serpa model on the reg on a regular basis, and you're really happy with it. I certainly have been. So that's the gun, and those are the 2 holster options that I really like with that particular gun. I carry, like I said, the Glock 19 has a 15-round magazine. It's a 15 double stack 9mm magazine. I carry 3 of these, 1 in the gun and 2 in a little soft shell case inside of my pack. So that totals out to be 45 rounds of ammunition. I figure if I got to fire more than 45 rounds of ammunition, you know, it's going to get real silly. So that's my gun of choice, my ammo of choice, my holster of choice, and why. Let's talk about some other firearm options that are really great firearm options for anyone who's looking to get into some type of lethal self-defense firearm. Okay, this is the only 40 cal that I'll mention tonight. Every other I'm going to mention 4 more guns. All of them are 9mm except this one right here. It's a really great duty-proven firearm. It's a 40 cal, bigger round than the 9mm. It's a smaller magazine. It's got a 9-round magazine. So this is the Springfield Armory XD40. A lot of fans out, a lot of people who love this gun. I'm a big fan of this gun. It would be, if you're looking for something with a little bit more knockdown power, just a bigger round. This is a really popular gun, and a lot of people love this gun. Another 9mm. That's a good gun. Sig Sauer P226, 9mm, 15-round mag, semi-auto. Just looks kind of like the Glock. You know, it looks kind of like the Glock does. Beautiful gun. Very popular gun. Lots and lots of people own that gun. Smith & Wesson M&P 9, very, very popular gun. You guys will get this slide presentation if you're trying to figure out a firearm for self-defense. You know, you're going to get this presentation, so you can print these out and you could go to a gun store and, you know, say, hey, I want to look at these 5 guns if you wanted to start. You know, this has a 17-round mag. You know, Glock 19's 15. Smith & Wesson M&P 9 is a 17, 9mm semi-auto. And then probably the most popular handgun of all time is the Glock 17, which is a little bit bigger than the Glock 19. It's got a little bit bigger magazine as well, 17-round mag. It's also a semi-auto, otherwise almost identical to the Glock 19, the one I just showed you. This one is, like I said, probably the most popular gun of all time. There are an insane amount of Glock 17s out in the marketplace. And so that means that there's a lot of available parts and pieces. This is a very easy gun to strip down in the field, if necessary. Those are kind of my recommendations for semi-autos if you're getting, you know, if you're trying to figure out what gun I want to get into, I want to start practicing, I want to start shooting, I want to figure out a bug out gun. This is a really great short list to consider. Wouldn't you agree that's a pretty good list, man?
Yeah.
So those are some really great guns to consider. But very solid arguments could be made to include a revolver, simply because of the sheer reliability of a revolver. The drawbacks are, of course, not as many rounds. You know, 15 rounds in my Glock 19, and, you know, revolver, you're getting 5 or 6. So, and then a really good argument could be made for a 22 long rifle pistol, especially one of those like Target bull barrel pistols. You know, I think any animal, all animal in North America at some point has been killed with a 22 long rifle pistol. It is, and they can be incredibly accurate and lethal guns. They don't have the knockdown power, but they're a real great target shooting gun. So for those of you who are saying, you know, Creek, but I really want to be hunting, you know, for you, because there's people in here watching that really want to kind of incorporate this whole hunting and foraging aspect into their bug out bag, and that's fine. I don't do that, but that's fine. Your 22 long rifle pistol will certainly put food on the table. You know, there's no way outside of maybe 20 or 30 feet with my Glock 19, there's no way I'm ever shooting a squirrel with my Glock 19 from 30 yards away. Never, ever, ever. You give me $1 million and I can never hit it, you know, or anything for that matter, much farther than about 20 or 30 feet. But anyway, non-lethal. So those are my kind of gun options, gun recommendations, gun ideas. Non-lethal. There are certainly non-lethal. Even though I carry a gun, I mean, that's last ditch, man. Last thing I want to do is shoot somebody. You know, I don't care what the last thing I want to do is have that on my conscience. You know, the laws are the same before, during, and after a disaster. I just don't want to deal with that. I don't want to shoot somebody. Obviously, I think there are definitely people who are watching who have shot people before. There are people in law enforcement. There are people that I know that there are at least 2 people watching tonight who have shot someone in self-defense as an intruder in their home. You know, and I know there's military personnel who are watching who have shot someone. I think every one of those people would tell me and anyone else watching, the last thing you want to do is shoot somebody, you know. But and for that reason, I also carry a non-lethal. option that I think you'll find really interesting. It's in my truck. Just as I started this webinar, I realized that I left this in my truck, but I carry the Sabre 3-in-1 pepper spray, widely used by, widely trusted, widely used, made in the USA. Tons of law enforcement, tons of police officers use this pepper spray. Now, listen, even with these non-lethal options, obviously there are laws that are different in every state that regulate the use and carry of firearms. But believe it or not, the same is true with all this non-lethal stuff I'm going to talk about. There are states where you got to like register and have a permit to carry pepper spray, and a couple of the other things I'm going to talk about. Some states you can't even have pepper spray. You can't even have this particular product in some states. So I'm including a link right here that lists those states and tells you a little bit about, just educates you on pepper spray in general. That's not the purpose of this webinar. The purpose of this webinar, this course, is to tell you what I carry and why. So I carry this. It's a 3-in-1, meaning it has a pepper spray, it has a tear gas, and it has a UV dye. It's only got a 10-foot range, but you can blast this sucker about 30 times. Okay, so it's not like a one-shot deal. You can really pound down on this thing and really, give it a go a bunch of times if you had to. This is a fantastic pepper spray that I would highly recommend for a non-lethal. It is very effective. I've seen videos of it being used. I've never personally been shot with it. Maybe we should do that. You know what, Jake Wild, stand up, man. You got time to take a hit for the team. Oh, he said he's off the clock. Okay, so some of you may have been shot by this stuff before in practice. If so, let Jake Wild know what it feels like. But the videos I've seen and the testimonies that I've read and seen of this are like, I've been hit with pepper spray. You've been hit with pepper spray before? Spray, yeah. OCC. Oh, we got a live wire here tonight.
It's probably on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, yeah, everything's on YouTube somewhere. But pepper spray is widely used for a reason, and that's because the stuff can be very effective. Something interesting that, I actually bought one just because I thought it was interesting. Let me show you this. I'm going to show you just up and close here. So this is the Kimber Pepper Blaster 2. I think it's called the 2 because you get 2 shots. You see those 2 white things right there? Those are the 2 barrels of this thing. It's like a little gun. You see there's the trigger. It's got a little trigger guard in there that you pop out if you need to. I'll point it toward Jacob. So you could pop this out. You could pop this out, and then you only get 2 shots with this, though. It's like one trigger pull, it fires one of these barrels. The other trigger pull, it fires the other barrel, and it's a pretty tight grouping of pepper spray. If you don't get it right the first or second time, you might as well just chuck this thing at their face and run, because you only get 2 shots with this. But it really isn't. It's very easy to pack and conceal. It's kind of a cool little thing. I've seen a video. I watched a video of somebody getting blasted with it, and it certainly seemed to be effective, and they didn't seem to be putting on the Ritz either. So 13-foot range with this, but it is a tight grouping. I'd say no, it doesn't spread any bigger than about a dinner plate at about 13 feet. So you got to be a pretty good shot with this. So this is kind of a cool little, I was just curious and bought it. I included a link for it if it's something that you'd be interested in. Okay, so I understand that, not all threats are human, right? Some of you live in places where there's a lot of dogs. I mean, who knows? Maybe the disaster lets all the zoo animals out, Last thing you want to be is getting attacked by an animal in a bug out scenario, or some kind of crazy dog. So I want to talk about this counter assault bear deterrent. There's a lot of different bear sprays out there. This is the one I own. I actually have this to take in my bug out bag. This is interesting stuff. This is regulated. Pepper spray isn't regulated by the EPA, but this is considered an animal spray, so it's regulated by the EPA. I think it's in the pesticide category, actually, which sounds odd. But this is certainly not designed for humans. It's designed for bear. It's very potent. It is incredibly effective against bear. However, So it's great for animal attacks. That's what I'm going to say. Okay, it's fantastic. It's fantastic for animal attacks. So I'm going to just go to full screen here so that you can see me wink. Okay, so it's fantastic for animal attacks. But let me just tell you also what this does. Okay, unlike a pepper spray, which shoots a pretty, like a squirty blast about 13 or 15 feet for a limited amount of time and a tight grouping of spray, this thing does not do that. Okay, this thing, you can hold this down for like 10 or 12 seconds, and it's a spray, it's like a fog-like spray that'll shoot 30 to 35 feet. And you could really like fog an area with this stuff. Okay. I could potentially be surrounded by a group of grizzly bears in central Indiana, right? It's potential. I could potentially be surrounded by a pack of wild, crazy animals in central Indiana, and that would feel so desperate, so out of options that I would need to fog an area. So just in case all the grizzly bears come and surround me in a bug out scenario, I've got a grizzly fog, a grizzly spray that I could literally blast out and kind of clear a room, if you know what I mean, a room full of crazy grizzly bears. You know what I mean? You know what I mean by that? All right. So, okay. So there's my bear. And that is, that's a stronger, it is a stronger percentage of the active ingredient that makes this stuff hot. It's stronger than kind of the human grade pepper spray. Clearly, it would need to be in order to deter a grizzly bear. Okay, so enough about the grizzly spray. Okay. I don't have any personal experience with the taser, world. I had a handheld taser when I was in college just for kicks, but I don't have any experience with this taser pulse. I got an email from a police officer actually saying, here's a really great non-lethal. I don't know if you're going to talk about it or not. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I included it, simply because you can buy these on Amazon. This is about $300. It's got a 15-foot range. It's police grade.
You're full screen right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Let's go here. All right, there we go. Thank you. We're good. That's why I got Jake Wild here. So it's smaller. It's smaller than my Glock. It's packable. It's got a laser light on it. You can hold down the kind of shock trigger on that for about 30 seconds. These things, guys, are absolutely, they are debilitating. If you've ever seen somebody shot with one of these tasers, they go down, they go down fast and hard. Mm-hmm. And this is a really great non-lethal, but it's pretty much a 1 or 2 shot wonder. You've got 1 shot, 2 shots, really close range. And, but it is a really effective tool. That is a non-lethal tool. But like pepper spray, even, these are also regulated in some states. Some states you have to have permits and licenses and register them, and you gotta just look up taser regulations for your state. If you Google it, they will pop up. In fact, you'll probably see the regulations on this link. I'll send you the link to where you can find these. They'll probably have the regulations right on that page. So it's a really interesting option as well. Now we're going to really cruise through these because I know we're about 15 minutes farther than I want it to be. I try to keep these in an hour. If you guys are finding value in this webinar, shoot a message to Jake Wild and give me some positive feedback. I would love to hear that. We're going to cruise through some questions and tips that have come from people who have watched the past 2 courses. Here's a great tip from Nikki about paracord. I mentioned paracord, and she says, hey, I cut each length of paracord in a different color. Example, 10-foot links are green, 50-foot links are black. That way my husband and I know by the color how long the cordage is. They're also labeled. That way I'm not wasting time on a 20-foot cord on a 10-foot job. Isn't that ingenious? It's like my reds are 20s, my greens are 10s, my blacks are 50. It's a great idea, for people who are, you know, just meticulously packing, and that's a fantastic idea. Okay, so thanks for sharing that, Nikki. We got a tip from Josh, who is a police officer. Josh, I appreciate this tip. Somebody had asked about how to keep their hands warm. Well, Josh, who's on duty all the time, says to keep hands warm, he uses a thin pair of liners on his hands, just a pair of glove liners, but he then covers those in a rubber glove, like a surgical glove. And he says as long as the rubber gloves are on his hands, they don't get cold, which is really interesting. That rubber just must keep the heat in, and those liners must be just enough to keep your fingers warm. He says this is also his bug out bag choice for cold weather gloves. It's what I call a pro tip right there. You know, so good information. Thanks for sharing that, Josh. I appreciate it. Gotten a lot of questions about, Creek, I'm trying to find a bug out bag. You say about 2,000 cubic inches, but everything I find is in liters. Well, here's your chart to help you out. I went ahead and did the calculations. Print this out when you get the presentation tomorrow. That way you've got a kind of a liters versus cubic inches side by side. And so my bug out bag is in between 30 and 40 liters. Okay, if that makes any sense. Question, Creek, why can't my bug out bag also be my non-con bag, my inch bag, my I'm never coming home pack? And I say to that, it can. It's just not mine. Mine just isn't that, but yours, that's the great thing. Yours can be whatever you want it to be. You know, you add in the hunting and foraging and a little bit more firearm type stuff, you know, you're going to get a heavier pack, but hey man, you know, it doesn't take much to be a bigger guy than I am. So you're probably a bigger guy than I am. You can probably carry more than I am anyway. So it can absolutely, just because I am presenting what I have designed for myself and what I think is going to help 80% of the people out there put together a really solid kit that is perfect for nearly every large scale disaster that's happened in the history, well, in the near recent history of the United States. Doesn't mean that you have to by any means follow these kind of limitations that I've set for 3 days. If you want to prepare for a month or 6 months, by all means, go for it. Trust me, man. I'm in your head too, because I've got a non-con pack that weighs about 90 pounds. And so I go there in my head for sure. You should see my non-con pack. Jake Wild's seen it. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So man, trust me, I go Red Dawn in my head all the time. Okay. Question. If you lived in the desert, would you delete anything from your bug out bag? No, probably not. And you're not going to want to hear this, but I would actually add more water. So for whoever sent that question in, I would add more water if I was in the desert, because I've spent a lot of time in the desert, and daggone, you need more water than other people. Question, what about gear maintenance items? I haven't heard you mention anything about sharpening stuff. I actually have removed all of the gear maintenance related items from my personal bug out bag. This includes my sewing kit and my sharpening stones. I just don't feel like I need that stuff in a 3-day bug out. Simple as that. Question, should every one of my family carry a bug out bag? Yes, and ideally their own kits should include their own clothing, sleeping items, fresh water, consumable food, and hygiene items. You know what all of those are, except for hygiene items, which we'll cover next week. Question, what are your thoughts about the military sleep system? I love it. It's a 3-piece, well, 4-piece including the stuff sack. It's a 3-piece sleep system for you guys who don't know. There's a cold weather bag, kind of a temperate weather bag, and then there's a waterproof bivvy that goes over the 2 of them. And you can kind of combine those 3 in multiple different ways to kind of meet your needs depending on the environment. I love it. I have it. It's in my non-compact, but it's too bulky and too heavy for my personal bug out bag. It's a great system. I've spent many crazy nights in many crazy places with that system. Like I said, it's in my non-compact, but it's not my bug out bag. It's just too darn big and bulky. And you would agree with me that they are big and bulky, wouldn't you, if you're watching? Okay, question. I prefer non-lethal self-defense. What are your thoughts about a baton? Well, I prefer non-lethal self-defense too, but I sure would not want to have to defend myself or my family with a baton. That's just me speaking personally. That would scare me. That would scare me to have to defend myself or anybody else with a baton. I would say, I would look at the people around me and I would say, listen, I'm about to defend us with a baton. You might want to start running right now. because they're going to be through me pretty quick, probably, you know. So that's my thoughts on that. You know, take it for what you will. Do not miss next week, people. Do not miss next week. Trust me, you do not want to miss next week. I'm gonna hopefully add some really cool insight into first aid and hygiene next week. I've had a lot of great input from doctors, physicians, EMTs, first responders about first aid, combat medics, some really interesting stuff, about hygiene from nurses, from home health care practitioners, from things like that. So I've got some really interesting insight about these, and I think I've got a really great first aid hygiene kit put together that I think you're going to really like. I hope I've added value into your life this week. I hope you feel like this last hour and 20 minutes was worth your time. I know it was worth your money, and I look forward to seeing you next week, and hopefully sharing something insightful. So I'm going to clean up this mess and try to get prepping for next week. So thanks so much, guys, for everything you do, for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next course, hygiene and first aid. Remember, it's not if, but when. Take care.